The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Oh, exciting times are these indeed, my friends. Exciting times are these indeed. It's guest time. That's simple enough, right? I need to get into all the details of it, but it's guest time here on Fantasy NBA Today. It is ramp-up time. We are 1 month, less than 1 month. We're less than 1 month from the start of the NBA campaign, which means it is ramp-up time. As you may recall, around this time last year, we started to get into mock draft recaps. In fact, I think we may have even done one at the very end of August last year. And Adrian and Neil, I believe, took care of one. They had a mock draft that they put together and then broke down on Fridays. We got a few more. We got some deep stuff ready to go. We got the Hoop Ball Forum mock draft, which I have to admit, I wasn't even sure that I sort of found out that it was happening as it was happening. So that one snuck up on me a little bit. And in an exciting twist, I put together an industry mock draft. I haven't done this before. I actually used what very small amount of clout I have, and I keel-hauled a bunch of fantasy enthusiasts, analysts, pros from across the internet. We got that mock draft. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be breaking down all of those mock drafts. We are going to be talking to the pros from the industry mock draft we did, getting their take basically on the teams they came up with, their favorite or least favorite picks from different rounds. And on top of all of that fun stuff, we have other guests. We have guests from individual teams. We got Michael Knight. We'll break down the Rockets from Space City Scoop. That's actually coming up later on in today's episode. We got Mike Pellichet to talk Pelicans with us. We got Lakers beat writer, sideline reporter, and 710 ESPN LA talk show host Mike Trudell coming on this week to talk fantasy sports. We got Philip Rossman-Reich to tell us about the Orlando Magic. The list goes on and on and on and on further. And there will be more. Make no mistake. We are in talks to have an additional, there's the unbelievable list of folks getting set to come on here. Our buddy Russ Peddle, he'll be coming on probably next week at some point. Jake and Amir Blumenfeld will likely be on the podcast at some point soon. If not this one, then the Lakers pod. So make sure you're subscribed to that. I'm telling you, man, this is going to be a good one. Mike Bassetti, he's coming on. I am stoked. This is going to be a good couple of weeks. 3-4 weeks. All the way to lead up, man. This is going to be a good one. Okay. So, here's where we start the whole thing. The draft guide. Guys, the draft guide. It's for sale. And that's what I'm going to leave it at right now on today's podcast. Although, by the way, I do officially now have the full list of everything you can get in the draft guide, so maybe I'll drop that on you right now. Currently in the draft guide, Fantasy Value 101, team and player profiles, minutes projections, second-year players, third-year players, percentage killers, pace reports, the schedule grid, schedule analysis, a head-to-head strategy guide, an auction strategy guide, a punt strategy guide, a shutdown, rest risks. Oh my God, there's more. DFS for beginners, DFS lineup construction, high mileage report, second half sensations. Coming soon to the draft guide, contract year players, dynasty strategy, deep league money counters, rookie reports, reader mock drafts, more DFS, and then coming a little bit later than that, sleepers, busts, the Hoop Ball 6, the Brewski 150, weekly ADP reports. That's my favorite. Listen to the podcast this week. I will be giving out coupon codes all week long. There's going to be one later on in today's show. And in fact, at some point, I'm probably going to let you guys know on Twitter where to find the coupon code in today's podcast. I'm not going to give you the actual code, but I'm going to tell you where to find it. Got to listen to the thing. So here's my plan. We're going to start getting into some of these mock draft stuff. I got a great interview with Michael Knight queued up and ready to go. And that, by the way, somewhere within that interview, you will get the coupon code for the Hoopball Draft Guide. I am Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today. At Dan Besbris on Twitter. At Hoopball Fantasy. At Hoopball Tweets. Make sure to give them all a follow so you can get all the up-to-the-minute fantasy news, among other things. I'd like to start with the Hoopball Forum mock draft. Not for any reason in particular. I just have an abundance of mock draft riches over here and decide how I want to use them. So we're doing the Hoopball Forum mock draft first. We're going to get into the industry mock draft results a little bit later. And what they will do here is they're each going to tell us a little bit about how to prepare for our own drafts. Let me explain myself. The industry mock draft is interesting. Obviously, it's interesting. But it's also very important because it tells us where the pros are taking people. And not just hoopball pros, but pros from across the spectrum. So it gives you, I think, a little bit of a better idea of where potentially different websites have players ranked. Because, right, these industry pros, where they take guys, is often pretty close to where they're advising their constituents to take guys. And a lot of what they're doing is accurate. A lot of what they're doing, we're going to talk about a lot of really good picks in this mix. There's a whole lot of stuff that I'm going to be taking umbrage with. But what it does do is if you can understand what other sites are suggesting, if you can understand what Hoopball is suggesting, and that's where we're going to get into the Hoopball mock draft, you can have a pretty good idea of where guys are going to go in your own draft. You know who you're playing with. We've talked about this before. You understand where the pros take guys. You understand where Hoopball suggests people take it. If you know where Hoopball's suggesting, if you know what Roto-World's doing, if you know what Basketball Monster's doing, if you know what Hashtag Basketball's doing, if you know what In This League is doing, if you know what everybody is suggesting out there, and you have a mock draft of sort of regular Joes that maybe aren't so into it that they're reading all the websites top to bottom, then you can parallel that. You can draw a connection between those websites, the people that read them, in your draft, and you can basically know where people are going to be targeting guys. So that's how we're going to do this. We're going to break down a Hoopball. This is basically a Hoopball mock draft. It's not all Hoopball pros. It's Draft Guide subscribers and some pros, longtime podcast listeners. It's the diehards here at the Hoob, as we call it, the Hoopball HQ, HBHQ. I think if you know people that are Hoopball readers or B150 readers, subscribers in your league, you'll probably have a pretty good parallel to some of this stuff, guys that Hoopball suggested over the years. There will obviously be some changes between now and then because the B150 doesn't get added to the draft guide until October 1st. But those of you that have been listening to us here at Hoopball for 2 years, you already have a pretty good idea of the guys we like and don't like. There will be some fine-tuning. Make no mistake. There are going to be some big, blow your eyes out kind of stuff. But those are the guys that you're going to be able to get in your league against anybody except those that have the B150. That's a special case. So then we're going to do, after we do the Hoopball mock draft, which will probably take at least half, maybe more of this week, then we're going to break down the industry mock. We'll have an idea of where those guys take it. And then we're going to look at a regular person mock. Or frankly, if one of you out there is in a 12-team league with a nice cross-section of readers and, 3 or 4 people that care a little bit less, I would love to see how your actual draft turns out. That's the most interesting stuff of all. It's looking more and more like I'm going to have both of my Roto mock drafts on the same day, which is a shame because I can't take one and put it on the podcast and analyze it and get ready for the next one. But those could be the last, 2 pods we do before opening day, something like that. I don't know. Just thinking ahead. Okay, let's dig into some of this hoop ball stuff. We've spent a lot of time here at the outset trying to set the stage for you, and I apologize for that, but it's an important thing we're about to get into over here. Hoop ball mock draft was conducted in the hoop ball forums. There's more fun stuff going on over there. You should check it out, hoop-ball.com. Click on the forums tab. It was run by the great Eric Ong. Round 1, we're going to go through it. I think we'll probably do 3 rounds today, would be my guess. Round 1, I'm going to give you all 12 names, and then we'll break them down. Anthony Davis goes first overall. James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Steph Curry, Karl Anthony Towns, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, Kevin Durant, Victor Oladipo, Damian Lillard, Kawhi Leonard, and Russell Westbrook. That is the first round of the hoop ball mock draft. This is a 9-category head-to-head mock draft is how it breaks down. But for our intents, for our purposes, I should say, we're going to treat it basically as a 9-category mock draft. If there's a name that jumps out at you, we might be able to tie that to the fact that it's a head-to-head thing. Like perhaps Boogie goes a little earlier. Maybe Porzingis goes a little earlier. But certainly here at the beginning of the draft, head-to-head and roto, 9-cat, your first few rounds are going to be basically the same. Anthony Davis, number 1 overall. I can't argue with that. I can't. And anybody that does is a lunatic. He was incredible last year. He should be the consensus number 1 pick in any 9-category league floating around out there. In an 8-category format, you could make arguments for James Harden. Obviously, the big turnover jump between the two of those guys brings them a lot closer together. But 9-category, there's just nobody that came close in totals or in per-game value last year. And Boogie's gone. Julius Randle's not going to be taking those kind of touches away from Davis. So provided he can stay healthy, he is on track to do it again. There's no one that can get up there in that stratosphere with the possible exception of Kevin Durant. He has that same obscene ceiling we've seen from Anthony Davis. We saw it from Kevin Durant the previous year, but injuries for KD have basically taken him out of the running for that top spot. I mean, we're talking about a guy that in his first year in Golden State, he shot 54%. He was almost 90% at the free throw line, a steal, 2 blocks a game, big-time scoring, okay rebounding, solid assists, 2 and change three-pointers per game. This was a guy that kind of in that Kawhi Leonard-ish mold was just good at everything. But last year he took a step back, took a little bit of a step back as his role with Golden State became more clear, which was make sure you're healthy come playoff time. It's hard when you've won 1. Now they've won 2 in a row. There's not going to be that same level of hunger for these guys. KD's the only other guy besides Anthony Davis that could get up into that per-game zone because he had a kind of, by all accounts, a bad season last year. I know it's crazy to say, but he had a down season compared to the previous year in basically every statistical category. And he was basically neck and neck with James Harden and Steph Curry for second place on a per-game basis. I mean, just go back to the previous year and look at what KD did. 25 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, 1.6 blocks, 54% from the field. He didn't get a whole lot worse necessarily. In fact, a couple of categories. Blocks were a tiny bit better. 3-pointers a little bit better. He actually scored about a point more because Steph missed so much time. But rebounds were down. Shooting percentage was down. Those are the things that vaulted him up to the top. Assists didn't change a whole lot. So on and so forth. Anyway, point of all this is Anthony Davis at number 1. It's an easy pick, but at the same time, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth because there is some risk that accompanies it. You can't do something else. You can't take a guy. You can't pass up on the dude who could be literally a quarter of a human being more valuable than the number 2 guy. You can't. You have to take him. So Anthony Davis, number 1, that's fine. James Harden, number 2, very reasonable selection. He has been, throughout his career, fairly durable. Although, and I think people forgot about this, he did miss 10 games last year, which on a totals basis left him in the number 4 slot behind Karl Anthony Towns and LeBron James. I think you could safely take LeBron out of that mix. I don't think he's going to be top 3. I don't think he's playing all 82 this year. I don't think Cat's going all 82 either, but Kevin Durant could go more than 68. We could see Giannis be better. I don't think James Harden is a lock to be, top 2 or 3. I think he could be in that number 4 slot. Again, the Rockets learned last year the most important thing was health in the postseason. But again, I can't find fault with it. He's a very safe play. He's going to put up massive numbers, and I'd be really surprised if he played fewer than the 72 games he had last year. Giannis at number 3. I have a little bit of beef with this one. You guys know that my Giannis situation is in limbo. I still don't see him adding the three-pointer or fixing his free throws. He was a high-volume 76%er. He was the only first-round pick to shoot under 80% at the foul line, besides LeBron James. The only other one was Giannis. Oladipo came close. He was a 79.9, so I'm going to round that up. Second round, you do have some sub-80%ers, but you just can't be that bad at free throw shooting and hit the top spot. The reason LeBron was able to do what he did last year was he played in all 82 games. He was number 6 on a per-game basis, and Giannis was right behind him at number 7. Now, Giannis is a really safe pick in the first round. I just don't know that I would take him at 3 because I feel, personally, the upside on that dude is capped until he fixes the free throw stroke. I think that'll come before the three-pointer. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong on that. But one of those two things need to change. He's never going to get back to that, 3.5 defensive stats per game. That was a crazy thing. This year should be a good season for him, though. I think it'll be a good year. Every year's a good year. Steph Curry in the number 4 slot. That's earlier than I would expect to see him go in a lot of drafts. In fact, most of the mocks that I've seen that are not all pros or all hoop ball people, he tends to fall to that 5, 6, or 7 area. I think he's a really nice value in that zone. Really surprised to see him go ahead of Karl Anthony Towns, who's been this pillar of durability. Cat going right behind Steph Curry. I have no problem with Steph going at 4. This is somebody who, like me, personally, I believe that he will have a bounce-back year in the health department. And if he does so, he could be the number 2 guy. So that's pretty good upside. I feel like, not that this team, they've got their 4th pick. If they don't take Steph Curry, it's not like he's going to get back to them. So you take your guy. I happen to think if you're picking 6th, you'll probably have a shot at him in your league. So Cat goes at 5. LeBron James goes at 6. That's too early, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think he's going to be going for the Lakers the way he went for Cleveland last year. I think there are going to be, I don't want to call them growing pains because he's obviously a full-grown man, but I do think there's going to be an adjustment period in LA. There's a lot of new pieces. They brought in a lot of dudes that can ball handle to try to give LeBron a little bit of a break from time to time. This is too early for him, and that's good news for the guys in the 7 and 8 slots because that means that they now have the option of Jokic or Durant. Jokic going ahead of Durant. I think if I was given the option, I probably would go KD before Jokic just because there's sort of that opportunity where if in some magical universe Kevin Durant played 73 or more games, right there you're talking about, a number that gives him a shot at top 2 like Steph. Where with Jokic, even if he plays all 82, I don't think he's going top 3. But there's probably a higher likelihood that Jokic plays more games than Durant this year. So, not necessarily put the odds on that, I suppose. You'd lean towards Jokic on the health department. But, KD, on a per-game basis, he's going to be better than Jokic. He just will. That's his fantasy makeup. So I'm probably going Kevin Durant first on these two. I don't think KD misses more than 3 weeks. That's what he seems to do every season. And last year, he missed 7 more games than Jokic, and still his value was better than Jokic for the season. Victor Oladipo going at 9, Damian Lillard at 10. Those two guys have been sort of inextricably linked in fantasy drafts this year, and I'm okay with that. I'd go either way. Depends on sort of your team build. Oladipo is going to get you more on the defensive side. Damian Lillard is going to get you a little more on the offensive side. Russell Westbrook at 12, that's too early. Simple enough. You know, he was number 24 on a per-game basis last year, which I know you're like, well, 24 to 12. That's a huge leap to go from end of second round to end of first round. He's going to have to completely fix his free throw stroke. You're going to hope that his field goal percentage somehow improves and he's not committing 5 turnovers a game. In 9-cat, he's not a first-round guy anymore. Plus, I don't think anybody's taking him at that spot. So I get it. Maybe this was a situation where this particular team wanted him. And, you know, if you're on the turn, these guys aren't coming back to you. So you take your guys. I really like, at 13, Paul George. That's a really nice pick on the other end of that turn. This is a team seemingly that likes the Thunder. But kind of a weird pairing. You almost have no shot in field goal percent with those two guys as your mega volume dudes. You're going to have to go real strong in field goal percent. But again, head-to-head league, you could punt field goal percent at that point. Call it a day, okay? So there's a reasonable strategy. Jimmy Butler at number 14. I like Jimmy Butler, but I don't like him. I don't like having to spend a pick this early on him. He's falling, guys. He's falling way past 14 in most leagues, especially with the injury issues, the health concerns. But, by the way, skipped over number 11 in that first round. How could I do that? Kawhi Leonard. That's about where we're seeing him go, right near the turn. And it's terrifying to me. I've given this speech before on the podcast, and I will give it again. If you have a pick towards the end of the first round, I don't know that you can really gamble like that. Because if this first-round pick doesn't pan out, and this team is stuck with Jimmy Butler as their only pick until number 35, you're screwed. That's what I was saying. If you have one of those top 3 or 4 guys that just putting up video game numbers on a nightly basis, you could get away with whiffing on a second-round kind of guy. But if you're down at the turn and you don't get some dude that comes out of nowhere to give top 5 value, you're in real trouble. I don't think that I would do it. I just, I like a certain amount of risk, but I don't like it at the end of the first round. Donovan Mitchell at number 15. I believe this is too early. We've talked about Donovan before. I don't know that I feel the evolution of his game. He's going to have to really ratchet up the scoring because I don't know that the other stuff is going to change a whole lot season over season. Joel Embiid at 16. This is another expectation, perhaps, that 9-category stuff improves. I'm not a huge fan of him going this soon. I think you could take something a little bit less risky. But, of course, what if he figures it out? He's the guy that you take where there's the big what if. What if he figures it out? You're golden. Kemba Walker at 17. A little bit too early on that one for my taste, but a very safe play on a Charlotte team that I like this year. Rudy Gobert at 18. That's fine. Ben Simmons at 19. I hope this team is punting, which it looks like they are. They got LeBron in the first round, so head-to-head you can kind of build that way. Drew Holiday at 20, that's fine, I get. Yeah, I mean, that's okay. We were seeing him go a little earlier in Yahoo Leagues, and I was hating that because that wipes all the value out. At least here, there's a little bit of space. Tiny little bit of space there. Chris Paul at 21. Ooh, interesting. So he's falling like a stone in the ocean. That is a really nice get at 21, and this is what we're talking about. This is a team that had Steph Curry already and was like, well, I'm not really hunting point guards. But hey, here's a guy that is one of the best point guards of the last quarter century. And if he's healthy, he's a first-round guy. I just hope he plays 65 games. I'll take a flyer on him. And you know what? If he goes 62 instead of 70, I still have Steph Curry to carry my team, I hope. So I'm okay with this one. I like that. Kyrie Irving at 22. I can't believe he fell that far. That one's pretty reasonable. Nice, safe play. Bradley Beal at 23. It's a little early for my taste. Dwight Howard effect and all that. And Chris Middleton at 24. I like Chris Middleton. Round 3, Andre Drummond at 25. I like that one just fine. Kyle Lowry, Clint Capella, 27. Yeah, these are all pretty safe. Devin Booker at 28. You guys know how I feel about taking a flyer on Booker. I don't like it. Miles Turner at 29, a little too early. Kevin Love at 30. I'm cool with that. John Wall, 31. Let's hope there's a bounce back there. Klay Thompson, very safe at 32. Draymond, very safe at 33. Bledsoe, 34. Porter at 35. This is still a fine place for Otto Porter. I do think he takes a step back with Dwight Howard in town and LaMarcus Aldridge. He is at 36. I could see him potentially falling a little bit farther, but this is a team that needed a little kick in the pants to field goal percent, so you take what you can get without hurting you in free throw stuff, and he should still be a big focal point in that San Antonio offense. So before we jump into the next thing, I do want to take just a moment and talk about a couple of names from that third round. I mentioned Miles Turner as one that I feel like he's getting pushed really high by, I guess, us, but definitely other websites. I'm not sure that as we get into the average, the regular man's mock draft or even real draft, that he'll be going this high. I think you could take him later, and I would prefer to take him later. This, to me, there might be a tiny bit of value there at 29, but he should fall farther than that. Devin Booker, I'm very afraid. I don't like his fantasy stat set anyway. The lack of defensive stats, the field goal percentage thing, the big turnovers, the low assist to turnover ratio, all those things kind of grind on me a little bit. And then starting the year hurt is just a massive gut punch. And then finally, Kevin Love at 30. This is one that I've talked about before. For those of you that are joining us now for the first time here this time of year, I love Kevin Love this year. I am not that worried about what's going to happen to him near the end of the season in a roto format. I know this is a head-to-head league, so maybe there's this fear that he misses the last week. Try to end your league a little bit early if you're head-to-head. If you're roto and you're worried about a shutdown or something, misses the last week or two, this is a guy that during his Minnesota years, and I know he's not the same guy, but he's now out from under the LeBron James thing. He's Chris Bosh, but without blood clots. And he's just ready to rumble again. So you're talking about a dude that last year was putting up per game value in the 20s and now has half an offense that just came back to he and the rest of this weird ragtag bunch in Cleveland. He could be putting up, I think, pretty easily, actually. Things don't have to change all that much for him to be a top 15 guy on a per game basis. If you're drafting him at 30, all you really need him to do is play about 60 games, and you're in business. I love this pick. This is my favorite pick of the third round. A lot of the other ones, as I mentioned, are just sort of very safe third-round picks. I like those too. I think when you can get a proven asset this early in a draft, you do it happily, and you move on. I was looking for the right moment to segue into talking to our guest, and I suppose it could be after we basically knock out the three most important names from the Houston Rockets. We saw James Harden go at 2, Chris Paul go at 21, and Clint Capella go at 27. He's fresh out of middle school, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Knight, who had his Twitter account. Okay, you know what? I don't want to tell the story. He's been on this podcast before. If you haven't heard him, it's a big welcome back. Space City Scoops, Michael Knight. I made the joke about middle school because why?
Well, currently my Twitter is suspended, which is always fun because I was updating my profile a little bit. Saw that I didn't have my birthday in there, so I went on there and put it in. And apparently whenever I was 12 years old, whenever I made my Twitter account, well, Twitter doesn't really like that. They want you to be 13. But so they have me currently locked out of my account. And so I am now a middle schooler. They're like, you are 13. I'm pretty sure I'm not.
Well, I'm hoping that by the time this airs, Mike and I are recording this show on a Friday, and it's likely going to air on a podcast first thing the following week. So I'm guessing that for those of you listening right now, this is probably a Monday for you. It's M_Knight SCS. Knight is, of course, with a K, like you've been knighted. And then SCS Space City Scoop. As I know those letters, S's sound like other things on podcasts. So give Mike a follow, provided his Twitter is actually alive again.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. And you can follow, if you can't follow Mike yet, you can follow Space City Scoop. That is at Space City _Scoop. Or you can just go to spacecityscoop.com. Mike covers the Rockets. Space City Scoop covers the Rockets. It's been a tumultuous, if mostly okay offseason. I feel like most people would say not as good as what folks might have hoped, but you did retain one of the top point guards in the NBA and maybe one of the best point guards in the last 20 or 30 years. So, it's like Laker fans. We got LeBron in LA, and then there's a whole lot of other stuff that's less awesome, but you can't be too upset about it, right?
No. I actually think it's a little bit underrated because of how much hate it's getting from, hate is probably too much, but a lot of people are talking about how bad of an offseason it was, to the point where I think it might be a little bit underrated. I still think this is a top-tier team, obviously, and we'll just have to see how it all plays out.
So let's talk about what I definitely want to get into, because it's fantasy draft season, and Michael's been informed, by the way, that this is going to take a bit of a fantasy bent on today's pod. Is what all these changes mean really for the I don't want to call them fringy guys, but they're a little bit more fringy when you talk about the Rockets are a team that has three very clear dominant fantasy players. James Harden, who's top 2, top 3 kind of guy. Chris Paul, if healthy, he's a first round kind of dude, and then Clint Capella, who established himself last year. Do you see anything much changing for these guys? And I guess more than anything, what do you feel is the plan for a guy like Chris Paul just to keep him on the floor this year?
Yeah, Chris Paul, that might be the hardest to sell on a fantasy value type thing. I think he's still going to put up the numbers when he's playing. Of course, he's still extremely talented and incredibly good at this sport, of course. But I feel like with the acquisition of Brandon Knight and signing Michael Carter-Williams and stuff, maybe the butt of jokes, but they're also solid, if like fourth point guards, that the Rockets can take that liberty to rest him on a given night. And so maybe not great for fantasy, because I feel like they're going to try to keep him healthy for the postseason and well rested.
Does a guy like Clint Capella have more room to improve over last season? That felt like a lot of things pointed in the right direction for him.
Well, I think so, because he just gets better each and every year that we've seen him. He goes in the offseason and works extremely hard to improve his game. Last year, he got better pretty much in every single category. He blocked two shots a game, averaged a double-double. I think he can continue to improve in his rebounding even more and be in that top-tier rebounding category as well. And maybe some other aspects of his offensive game. I feel like his point production was probably about where he'll be for a little bit until maybe he develops some more offensive game.
Any chance that he could make an Andre Drummond-like leap at the free throw line, or mid-50s, high 50s maybe? Is that what folks should expect from him going forward?
I think he can make that kind of leap, because last year he started out so well from the free throw line, and it just kind of, as the season dragged on, it kind of deteriorated there. But he has the right form, and like whenever he misses, it normally clanks off the back of the rim. So I feel like he can probably, with the help of work, he's been working so hard on that as well, with even more experience and training this summer. I think he can get that free throw number up, but probably the more realistic thing is to expect in the 60s, low 60s, mid 60s percentage.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good spot to hope for. Okay, here's what I really wanted you to talk about on the show, and that's all the other guys. The dudes on the Rockets that we've seen, like a Trevor Ariza, who obviously isn't there anymore. He's a member of the Phoenix Suns now. This was a guy who was locked in. He was basically the number 60 player in fantasy for the better part of half a decade going on now, and he's gone. Luke Baumute, who really wasn't a fantasy impact guy, is also gone. PJ Tucker, who every once in a while he'd have like a 2 or 3 game span where it looked like he was fantasy relevant. He's a little bit now sort of the last man standing on that really tough wing defender / small forward / power forward / center, or whatever they want to throw him at. Is there a universe where he could do enough at the offensive end to be fantasy relevant, or is his role going to remain pretty much the same, but maybe with a few extra minutes per game?
He will, let's see. So for fantasy value, I'm not sure if he'll be putting up any more type of numbers than he has in the past. He will be playing more, and he'll be guarding better people. Like, he'll probably be tasked with Kevin Durant and stuff if both him and Melo start. We're not putting Carmelo Anthony on Kevin Durant, hopefully.
Yeah.
But I don't really see him putting up more than, I think he had 8 points a game last year or something like that.
Yeah, 6 and change actually.
It was 6. Oh goodness. Yeah. Well, maybe a little bit uptick, but maybe a little bit more on his rebounding, because the Rockets will be missing that. Ariza was kind of an underrated rebounder, I'd say, for the team. So we'll need, especially in the playoffs last year with Tucker, he really stepped up on his rebounding. Had a few 10 rebound games. I could see more of that in the regular season, for sure.
Yeah, Trevor Ariza, I think you could almost say underrated at almost everything.
Yeah.
By the way, you're talking about Tucker in the playoffs. He averaged 9 points, 6.5 rebounds, which was well above his season mark. And he played almost 34 minutes a game in the postseason compared to, I think it was about 27, 28 during the regular season. So maybe that's more... it sounds like in line with what you're thinking about. Okay, so if his offensive touches aren't changing a whole lot, if his game is going to be, same kind of rate per 36s just with more minutes, with these guys leave, I mean, Trevor Ariza did take not a ton of shots per game, but in that 9 to 11 range basically every year. They got to go somewhere. It seems difficult in my mind to see James Harden and Chris Paul taking more shots. Paul, maybe. Yeah. Do they fall to Carmelo and Eric Gordon directly? Is it kind of a one-to-one thing?
I would say so, probably. So, yeah. I can see it with Melo. I mean, it obviously all depends on the fit. Whether if he keeps playing, he's signed for the minimum, which is very great, really great deal for the Rockets. Last offseason, looking to get him for the $28 million, and then ending up signing him for the veterans minimum is beautiful, because if he doesn't work out, you sign him for the minimum, and he's still really good friends with Chris Paul and James Harden, so I don't see him being a huge issue there. And from what I've seen, he seems to have like a slight change in attitude. We'll have to see as the season goes on, but I feel like he's more locked in, especially with the down season. It might have gotten to him a little bit in Oklahoma City. I feel like he's ready to do what it takes, and that would be he's going to be shooting more wide open shots than he's ever seen in his life with 2 elite playmakers. So I could see those shots going to him. And Eric Gordon off the bench, a wonderful playoffs that he had. And near the end of the season, he was just going strong. I could see him continuing that and having more shots.
All right, so let's dig in a little bit more on each one of those guys. Last year, Carmelo averaged 16 points per game, 5.8 rebounds, 1.3 assists, about half a block and half a steal in 32 minutes a game on a career worst 40% shooting from the field. 77% at the free throw line. A lot of things for him had that kind of Victor Oladipo feel in Oklahoma City where just nothing went right. I've talked to some people on this who I would deign to call experts, certainly more than me, who said that it isn't all Russell Westbrook's fault, that a lot of it is Billy Donovan's fault for not figuring out a better way to utilize a guy like Melo, or really anyone around Russell Westbrook. What is a reasonable, I don't want to say expectation because it's tough to know going into the season, but looking at his last couple of years in New York, the field goal percentage was closer to 43, 44. The free throw was more like 83. He averaged over 20 points a game. I can't imagine he could get over 20 for the Rockets, right? But it does seem like the percentage category should come back a bit.
No, I think he'll be more efficient for sure. I don't think he's going to get to 20 points a game unless everything just happens to click perfectly in this offense, which I wouldn't say it's like very likely, but you never know with how the D'Antoni offense can revive players' careers, especially now that, D'Antoni in New York didn't work with the players they had there, but it's definitely working in Houston. I feel like Melo will be able to buy in with that. Still don't think he's going to average 20, but maybe in that 18 range with somewhat decent shooting, maybe not 40%, but maybe around 43 or 44. I feel like that would be pretty successful for him.
So it sounds to me like your belief or your hope and expectation would be the only thing that might go down for Melo this year would be field goal attempts. Everything else feels like it should go up.
I feel like that should happen, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so if he's up in the 18 range and Melo's taken some 13 or 14 shots per game and Eric Gordon took 14 shots per game last year, is there any more meat that Eric Gordon could sort of bite off? I mean, he did average 18. He was taking 9 3-pointers a game for the last 2 years in a row. Is there really any room for him to do more on the offensive side, or do you feel like maybe there's are you looking at kind of similar numbers year over year? What are your expectations for how things shake out for what did the retiring Ralph Lawler call him, EJ?
Well, let's see. For Eric Gordon, I said earlier that he might get some more shot attempts, so now you put it like that. I'm not sure, actually. Off the bench, he's the primary shot taker off the bench, obviously, putting up 9 threes a game in the last 2 years. But I feel like it's kind of just like a game-to-game basis, really, with the Rockets. Because if there's been Eric Gordon games where he takes way less than that, and some games where he takes in the 20s shots. If he's having a decent year, I could see him having an upscale in shots for sure. I'm not sure exactly how that would fit. Maybe it results in Melo taking less shots because Eric Gordon is probably a little bit more talented on the offensive end at this point in his career. But we'll just have to see how it all plays out because at this point it's just a big guessing game, I guess you could say.
A little bit, yeah. What about Carmelo Anthony's rebounding? We've talked about underrated rebounders. He's actually been decent in that department for most of his career. It seems like there are a handful of them for the grabbing on this Rockets team.
Definitely. Like I said earlier with Tucker having to rebound more, a lot of those also fall to Melo. And he is an underrated rebounder, especially when he plays that power forward position, which is where he is, from what I can hear, what I've seen, that is what the position that Melo will play this year, which is perfect for him, especially defensively, so he doesn't have to guard those threes. But playing a stretch four and guarding people like Draymond Green or players that are a little bit easier for him maybe to guard than Kevin Durant everything's a Warriors comparison now, of course.
Well, that's how you got to stack yourself up against, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So Melo's playing the 4. Melo could have a little bit of resurgence. We don't know exactly how high it goes. In terms of off-season acquisitions, Melo's the one that's getting a lot of attention. Rockets also brought in a couple of other names. Who was the other guy that, to you, feels like maybe the most underrated? And please, God, don't say Marquise Chris.
No, not yet. No.
Thank goodness.
No. Thank goodness. I think it's James Ennis. I feel like that's one of the more underrated signings this offseason that people really aren't talking about too much. James Ennis, he's not going to put up huge numbers for you. But when you're talking about defense, that's what the Rockets needed to sign this offseason. It's more defense since they lost Ariza, and Bamute. And James Ennis really comes in, and he is a younger defensive stud, maybe not always fantastic, but he's a solid defender who's had success shooting the 3 in the past. Didn't really happen in Detroit last season, but especially with New Orleans a couple of years ago, he was pretty darn good on that end, shooting 3s. And I talked to Matt Bullard a couple of weeks ago, the Rockets broadcaster and former player, and he called him a kind of like a younger version of Ariza. I'm not sure he can get that great production, but he's definitely a great pickup this offseason and someone people aren't really talking about.
Interesting. Talking to Michael Knight of Space City Scoop, again, provided the young buck gets his Twitter account turned back on. It's M_Knight SCS. Please do give him a follow. Space City _Scoop is the Twitter account of Space City Scoop. What do you guys got going on over there? What's the latest feature folks can check out?
Latest feature, it's been a little bit dead. Not the website dead. We'll be posting every day at least once. But The offseason's definitely taken its toll. I guess the Ryan Anderson trade was the biggest thing recently, as well as had a few interviews this summer that were pretty good. Like I said, with Matt Bullard, and then I got to talk to Daryl Morey earlier in the summer, which was
outstanding.
Just incredible.
What's the best way for folks to find those?
To find those, you can search up Daryl Morey interview, and it's one of the top Google searches. You can also just put in Space City Scoop into that Google search as well, and you'll find it pretty easily. And Matt Bullard interview as well should pull up.
Outstanding. One last thing here before we let Michael go. One thing we're doing on these podcasts as we start the era of the guest is we're going to attach a draft guide coupon to every single guest we have on the show. Michael, I was thinking about making the coupon code MELLOW. What do you think about that?
Mellow, that works.
Unless you got something else short we could throw in there. We could make it SCS, but that's hard for people to hear.
You do 12-year-old. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, punch in 12-year-old, and we'll see if you get anything off the draft guide. Let's make it MELLOW. MELLOW. That'll be your draft guide coupon attached to Michael Knight's appearance here on Fantasy NBA Today. You will get $3. I'm making it a big one this time. You're getting $3 off a draft guide that's only $14. So that's, I don't know. Here, how many fingers do I have? 1, 2, 3. That's like 30% off, guys. Am I getting that close? No, it's around that. It's pretty close to that. Thank you, Michael. A massive, massive thank you for coming on, telling us what to expect from the Rockets this year. And we'll talk to you about some non-fantasy draft-related stuff in the next few weeks, if that's okay. Can we get you back on?
Yeah, always.
Beautiful. He is Michael Knight. Again, sort of on Twitter right now at M_Knight SCS. Good luck with that. And good luck with your bar mitzvah. I hear that's coming up.
Oh, yes. Coming up soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
So that was Michael Knight of Space City Scoop. This was rounds 1 through 3 of your Hoop Ball Forum Slow Mock recap here on Fantasy NBA Today. You got your coupon code. Go get yourself a draft guide for today's $3 off. It's a good one, man. That's a big chunk off. We'll have a game coming up later on in this week. We'll talk about, might be pitting some of our guests against one another in an Ultimate Draft Guide grudge match. I'll explain towards the end of the week. For now, use Mike's coupon code. That is MELLOW. MELO. MELLOW is the coupon code at hoop-ball.com. Click on the Draft Guide tab. You can get yourself the Draft Guide for... I really should have... I can't believe I didn't pull up the calculator at any point during that entire interview after I flubbed my way through the first one. It is 21% off, I think, right? 11 instead of 14. Yeah, it's 21% off the regular price. Again, the Brewski 150 gets added to that bad boy on October the 1st, so you might as well get it now before the price goes up, which it will. It will. And with the coupon codes, you can get it for, I think what would be something like 40% off the final price on this thing. So you really ought to get it now. Again, one more big thanks to Michael Knight. Hopefully the Twitter situation has rectified itself. We'll cross our fingers for the young buck. Hope you enjoyed the mock draft recap. We got a different schedule coming up this week, so we're going to be doing mock draft recaps, as I mentioned earlier on. We're going to have guests floating in and out, and stay tuned for big news out of the Hoop Ball podcast division. Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoy your Monday. Again, we'll get into, I think, honestly, I know everybody likes to talk about the first couple of rounds, but talking about 4, 5, and 6, that's what's coming up on the next one. That's where things are going to get real fun. We're going to start to see some interesting names pop up in those rounds. Anyway, that's the rest of the week. I hope you guys can hear how excited I am about all this. I can't contain myself. So revved up. I am Dan Besbris. This is a Hoop Ball presentation. It's Fantasy NBA Today. Go get a draft guide, rate and review the podcast if you have a moment, and go follow Mike and Space City Scoop on Twitter, or just Space City Scoop if there isn't anything else. Well, really a big thank you to all of our guests coming up over the course of the next few days, and Mr. Knight just getting the ball rolling on that front. Enjoy your Monday, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.